If you enjoy listening to adventure stories, then you should visit thedihedral.com. You will find stories from other members of the community and read about climbing, life, and the outdoors. Follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. Let's connect and climb on!
Climb on! Roll! Hello, everyone. This is Carrot, welcoming you to another episode of the Dihedral podcast. Our guest today wears many hats. Among other things, he's climbed Everest, was a pro racquetball player, an entrepreneur, a psychologist, and psychology professor. I feel lucky that Professor John Bryant is able to join us today to talk about the psychology of climbing, and even luckier to call him a friend. John, we appreciate you taking some time to talk with us today. Welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. I'm flattered and flabbergasted to be here. It's been a while since then, and it's good to reminisce.
All right. So before we get into reminiscing, I want you to talk about the psychology of climbing. And so I have some general questions.
Good.
I'm not looking for specific answers. That probably is based on people in general, but some general answers. So some people like to climb, some people don't like to climb. How come?
Well, climbing is just about like anything. You go out to Uncle Herbert's farm and climb all over hay bales in a barn, and you go out to someone else's house and you do bouldering and things like that, or you climb trees because they're easy to climb. And then one day someone says, you want to learn how to climb? And everybody has their entrance way into what that climbing is. And so some people are going to abandon it quickly because they get what they get. And it's not enough to maintain them to buy the equipment, to get the training, to read, to learn. So I got involved because I'm a Wisconsin boy, in case that term Wisconsin doesn't give it away. And I was living in Southern California, Long Beach, and I missed the cold. And so I had a friend that I played racquetball with in the old days, and I said, let's take this course together by Sierra Club of mountaineering and learning to read the mountain and stuff like that. So signed up to Sierra Club, and it was like 8 weeks. Every 2 weeks you met at this community center in El Monte, California, up in the foothills. And toward the end of it, it came around to, would you like to climb some more? And you can take this during this 8-week class. We did several different things. We had a big textbook. We had to learn knots. We had to learn different things. We had to learn to read the weather, things like that. And it wasn't an academic kind of learning. It was, this is how you do that. And then we'd go test them. So for the last 4 weeks, we just go out into the mountains. On a Saturday morning, we'd get out there, independent of whether the weather was good or bad. That was key. And so we'd say, well, we're going to climb up now. And we could have been a bouldering of a couple thousand feet. But, it's just, you've got a backpack and you got food, and it's kind of like, let's go do this. So anyhow, that's how I got started. And then my friend and I, we'd go camping just so he could smoke weed without any interruptions at all. And that was the reason. And we would do it in snow. I mean, we got caught in a snowstorm, and it was just fun. And I loved it because I got to sleep in the sleeping bag and in a tent in the cold weather, and it's a very good thing to do.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. As you were talking, I heard you use the word "we" a lot. You have Sierra Club, and there's a story that you, just for the listeners, John and I talk pretty regularly, at least once a week, as long as we can, or are able to. And something that John brings up every once in a while is this role of going out to eat, where a lot of people, John, you take over if you feel like it, where a lot of people go out to eat thinking it has something to do with the food. And maybe that has part to do with it, but there's also the community aspect to it. And so when I hear you say "we" a lot, can you talk a little bit about the role that community plays in getting people to stick with not only climbing but anything?
Yeah. I mean, everything from churches and synagogues and mosques to YMCA activity to team sports, it's all about the we. You know, I played racquetball for, let's see, I played racquetball since I was 13. And I always thought it was about the ball and the equipment, you know, and can you go up the ladder getting better. But it was about the people you played with. I mean, if you went to the racquetball court and your friends weren't there, I mean, it was different. But if your friends are there, you know, they give you crap, you give them crap, you know, and you know their game and they know yours. So you try and then do things that they don't know, and so you get better that way. But no one ever remembered the score the next day. It was always I got to play racquetball 3 times this week for 3 hours with one of my best friends. You know, it's just really great. Yeah. And so it's like dinner. Dinner's an excuse to bring the community together. And if it's a bunch of professors, or if it's a bunch of engineers, or it's a bunch of business people, it's just about the community. And so the we thing, if it's not there, you're not going to, without that support of we, you're not going to continue to climb. I think.
I think, I mean, yeah, I mean, unless you have other things drawing you to it, like a paycheck or something like that.
Yeah. Yeah. But then you'll find people are wanting to climb with you.
You're the one paying for the bill when you go out to eat.
Well, if you're paying for the bill, or they're using some of your gear, or they're going to learn how to fall down a mountain with just an ice axe, they'll probably want some lessons. So you get that. Young guys get taught from the old guys, and the old guys get taught from the older guys.
So, John, are we talking about reinforcers here? Is that what the community?
Yeah, it's rewards.
Rewards?
I mean, it's rewards in the general vernacular. Technically, it is reinforcers, but these are things you want to do, not because they have any inherent thing. It's because of the context. Being in the mountains in the morning at 4 o'clock in the morning is just good.
Yeah.
And it's like being at the top of a mountain. If you do it alone, you don't get to share that moment ever again with anybody.
Yeah.
But if you do it with one person, you can say, remember Gagornio and the storm? Oh man, that was great. You know, Mount Washington in Vermont or New York State, I guess. That was it was 15 below, and we were camping with, he wasn't a climber, but he became a climber. And now we have that forever. I
think it's interesting, right? So you and I, clearly, There's something about waking up to watch the sunrise while
Yeah.
you're still tucked into your sleeping bag
Oh
on
yeah.
top of a mountain. But other people aren't moved by that at all. How would you explain what accounts for the differences as to why some people enjoy it and other people don't?
They didn't have early experiences for one thing, so they, they didn't. Maybe they didn't live by water, and they didn't see a stream 10 feet across slowly close over in ice, and in the morning slowly melt back to a running stream. So if you don't have the early parts of climbing, like challenging yourself on a tree or getting some people together and going bouldering or something like that, or just like at the University of Colorado, they have these irons that are pushed out by volcanoes right on campus, and they're not set for climbing, but people climb on them, and so it's like whether you're dating or whatever, you just go hang out by those things because there's a lot of pine, there's a lot of trees, there's a lot of people saying, "Yeah, I wonder if I can climb that barefoot." So someone midsummer says, "Yeah, I'll go climb it barefoot just to see if I can." So I mean, you got to have some early practice. If you're risk averse, yeah, that'll probably take longer. But if not, you'll find if you find someone you have an affinity for and they want to climb, you're going to start climbing.
Yeah.
And if you find someone that doesn't want to climb, you're going to go climb alone if you already know how to climb.
Yeah.
And they're going to see how excited you are, and they're going to appreciate that you're excited for climbing, but they're not.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's just, you got to have people around you. I mean, we talked about many things in the course of the last decade, but the issue is you can't really do anything alone that's sustainable or worthwhile. It's all the big stuff in life are with someone else. And so, swim team is the same thing. I mean, it's a solitary sport. It's very bizarre, but you're not getting any air. And so you have to figure it out by yourself in the middle of a race. And that sets really good with your nervous system and what you achieve when you do something like that. You did this thing in the absence of a lot of air, and it worked out.
I have a list of terms that you've been known to say.
Oh boy.
And don't worry,
Yeah.
they're not those types of terms.
Okay, yeah.
And I'm wondering if I can give you these terms and you can do your best to explain it, and then maybe use
relative to climbing.
Yeah, exactly. So try to explain it and then maybe give an example relative to climbing. So the first one is being conditioned.
Boy, that's a hit. That's a home run right there. Everything we do is conditioned, and we just don't know that. And we've got a history of people telling us, no, we're not conditioning, we have free will. But besides all that, everything is conditioned. And when you climb, you are conditioning yourself, and the people around you are helping you condition yourself as you're helping condition them. If you're wearing shoes that are inappropriate for the rocks you're on, someone will tell you that, and that's conditioning. They'll give you the heads up. You might not do anything about it that day, but you'll start thinking about making sure your shoes fit the terrain that you're climbing on, because you don't want a lot of scree, and then suddenly you think you're surfing as you go down this rocks. So a lot of that conditioning is really important. it's everything. So you hit a home run on that one. So when you pick up a book or you talk to your friends in the club about climbing, you are essentially conditioning each other at the same time to invest in this vocabulary and this technology and this activity. And it juices you and it juices them. And all the jerks in the world, if that doesn't work, the people that don't fit in, they'll try and try and try. But if you're not if you're not handling your conversations in a reciprocal way, it'll be a problem. So people will tell you their stories, and you need to pay attention, because there's a snippet in there that you probably need.
If we go back to what we were talking about earlier about waking up on a mountain at 5:30 in the morning versus the person who's just like, my bed's fine, I don't need your mountain.
Yeah, right.
Could you explain that? Would that be an example of conditioning?
Yeah, they got conditioned differently. I have been married a few times, and I've had different experiences with those women who did like camping, and those that don't. And the same goes for all the other sports and all the other activities and things like that. My wife, of the last 2.5 decades, taught me about theater. And it wasn't, you will read this book and you will know this stuff when we go to the theater. It's more the subtle, it's more the interactive type. You go to the theater, you see someone get you even angry or emotional, and you talk about it for the next 3 days, and you're hooked, because it's the business of theater to make you emote in some way. And when that happens, you are drawn to whether it's comedic or mysterious or psychedelic, that becomes a reference, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's like their first motorcycle ride. That's a reference of what that's like.
Yeah.
And when that happens, you can see something on the screen and say, I know what that motorcycle, I'm not on a 650 Harley or anything like that, but I know what that feels like. And so your conditioning that you got when you were coming at life, and you just were at the junction where you're talking to Tim now, that junction, there are different paths, and some people have references that say, do not risk yourself, don't stub a toe, what if you fall, da 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 da. And other people say that's the fun.
Yeah.
You don't try to fall, but you do things right above your fear level, and then you get back into the safety zone. So I had this quote here, and it was from someone I respect, but I'll just give it to you. Years ago, I read this. A person said, when society cradles every event in our life, coddles us and protects us, there will be a set of people who put themselves in harm's way just to have the exhilaration of escaping that harm.
That's good. That's a good quote.
And I said, that is crazy. And then I looked around. Racquetballs are frequently hit around 130 miles an hour. Climbers usually climb things over their height. So that's pretty good example. Football players, basketball players,
yeah,
run and gun. You're from Detroit, so you understand hockey.
Yeah,
same thing.
Great example.
That you can't even see.
Yeah.
So we do that, and there is an exhilaration with achievement, whether it's putting together a project in a business or a lesson plan.
Yeah.
Well, no. But once you've escaped from the fear that you're not ready as a student or as a teacher, it's pretty exhilarating. It's addicting.
Yeah.
I need that juice.
I'm going to put these next three terms together.
Right.
You can separate them. You can talk about them together. You can say they're nonsense. Antecedents, behavior, consequences.
Yeah, that would be what makes up just about everything that any organism does on different levels for sure. But if you see an ant and they're marching through your driveway to find food or protection, they have some antecedents probably in their genetics as well, which is also antecedent. And they have some immediate antecedents that are saying, I'm hungry, or it's rain. I understand there's rain coming because they pick up different messages than we do. And so they behave according to those antecedents. And so you've got the antecedents, and then you do things to either avoid negative things and get more positive things. And then the consequences of that, if it works, you'll do it again. If it doesn't work, you may do it again. But if it doesn't work a few times, you'll stop doing it.
Yeah.
No one is going to stick their fingers in a candle flame a couple of times to see if it hurts. They'll probably pick up on the non-subtleties really quickly.
Yeah.
It's the consequences. So there's another saying out there that embodies all this. Man acts upon the world and changes it. And in response, the world responds to those acts and changes the man. And so you have this reciprocity, whether it's relationships or your dog, or which is a relationship, or your boss, or all those things. So all three things, they come together, and it would be really interesting. It'd be really valuable if you could come up with behaviors that didn't have those three things bundled in different packages. And there are different packages because time is another issue besides the doing. Time is an issue. Temporal things are an issue. If you need an example of that, in traffic, if you pull up to a stoplight just as it's turning red and all the other cars are lined up 3 lanes across, you don't even need to look at the light turn green to know it's time to go. You just look at the car next to you, and at 1 minute and 53 seconds, someone's going to move. They're going to take their foot off the brake because the lights generally are 2 minutes. And they learn the temporal thing, and if someone presses the passenger walk sign button, it's extended and people go crazy. But the point is that we're temporally conditioned too, which is why we've come to say, I think I'm hungry because it's noon, which is back asswards. But the point is that we're temporally conditioned too, which as a professor, you know, because you see all the students with 3 minutes left to go in the class, they're starting
to close.
They're fudgety. They close their books. They do that.
Yeah, it's like, what are you doing? I'm still talking.
Yeah, right. My watch broken.
Yeah, exactly. It's interesting.
Yeah, it's temporal, and so it's all that put together.
I think when route setters set new routes at a gym, like the moment they start to clean up, like all the climbers are just ready to jump on those new routes.
Yeah, those new routes are just generalizations of the old ones that are different enough to cause some puzzles to go, wait a second, I used, that's not there anymore, so now I got to do something else. That's a huge, I mean, that parallels life. You're walking down the street and things happen. And it's the same street. You're ultimately, you walk down that street a lot. But those small generalizations, you use the past data, walking down the street, the past data of climbing when those routes are made, you use that data to figure out the new routes. And so that's conditioning too. That adds to your repertoire.
It's interesting. And of course, we talk about this a lot, but it works in a lot of directions.
Yeah.
As the climbers are getting ready to jump on these new routes, I think that the route setters enjoy it. And all of a sudden it's like there's 5 bolts left that they take 30 minutes to pick up just to force us to wait a little bit longer. Yeah. But I can see how
they do enjoy it because they're trying, they're climbers probably.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so they're trying, in a sense, they're aware of that excitement. And so they're saying, I wonder what would happen about this one.
Right.
Yeah. And so that's always the fun. And if it's too bad, or if it's not convenient or too hazardous, they'll reset it, but not much. Right. And that's part of the learning too. It's all learned. It's all conditioned.
So the next term I want to throw at you is causality.
Yeah.
What can you say about that?
There's I can say that if you were a physicist, you would be better suited in mathematics to detect whether there's causality. But no one can detect while you're drinking water the causal factors while you're drinking water right now. Not me, not Einstein, my good friend who's a theoretical astrophysicist, Mark Nyrink, cannot guarantee causality.
Yeah.
So I'm thinking, if there's not causality, what is there? Well, it appears there's causal modes. There's when 8 things are working to get you to drink the water you just drank. That's probably the causal mode, but none of them by themselves forced you to drink that or made you drink that, or your brain didn't think that. Here you're talking, you're doing this and that and the other thing, and that's what we do. We respond to not a stimulus, unless it's someone shooting at you, but even in that environment, we respond to stimulus sets that are patterns. And when the pattern's bad, you behave that way. And when the pattern's good, you behave that way, because you've been trained in the past what your patterns are. And so when the bottle you're drinking, if you just show it, if you can just show what that is, there are now millions of those bottles for sale at every store imaginable, whether it's Starbucks or Target or a barista's stand or whatever. We have been conditioned to carry our water supply as if we were going to die of thirst. You wouldn't see it in Africa, put it that way.
Yeah. So, let me know if this sounds even remotely close to what you were saying. Let's say somebody in Norway is listening to the show or something right now, and somebody asks them, hey, why are you listening to that show? There's not a reason why they're listening to the show. There's a whole array of reasons.
Yes, absolutely.
That push us in certain directions.
Right.
It's interesting that this bottle, it's got a sticker that says keep on climbing. It's a Nalgene bottle. it's got a list of philosophers on it. Like it's all these things that if you're like, hey, describe yourself, I could kind of hold up this bottle.
Yeah. Here, I'll get back with you in an hour.
And this is a matter of everything that we've been talking about. There's antecedents, there's behavior, there's consequences, there's
right. And it's not always good. I mean, you don't know, the word punishment is not meant in the police form that we have in the colloquial way. But punishment is when the consequences and that antecedent behavior consequence, when the consequences aren't good. And you're not always punished for when you speed or you do something illegal or something like that. And so there's an intermittent sense that even obfuscates what the controlling factors are. And suddenly, you pick up a carabiner and you say, this is my new carabiner. Where the hell did that come from? So the point is that you can't really point. In physics, you can point to it, but it's still a probability statement that when I drop this bottle, it will, gravity, which we've measured, it will hit the floor, and if it's glass, it'll have other properties. And so there's a lot of stuff going on. But even gravity is different at each pole and at the equator. So that's not even a constant. So it's not 100% probability. It's just so likely you don't, it's in there with absolutes, but there is no absolute.
All right. So
that's how it works.
Our next term I wanted to go over is reinforcers. And so I don't know what you think about the notion of reinforcement schedules.
Yeah.
I was wondering if I could read those off and you can let me know like how they're useful or how they're not useful.
Right.
I only have 4 of them. I don't know if there's like
that's the number. Basics.
Okay. So can you tell us what a fixed interval schedule is?
A fixed interval schedule means that every hour you get paid. Every 4 days you get paid. It's a fixed interval. It's also a number in this case, but at a fixed interval, you'll get paid, or you'll get reinforced, or you'll get attention, or you'll get something that may be reinforcing to you, and you'll be aware of it.
Okay.
But, that's what that means.
All right, and we're going to come back to that in a second. We're going to talk about which one of these you think is strongest. Maybe that's the word for it. So we have fixed ratio.
Fixed ratio is the number of times you do something.
Okay.
So if you're picking cotton and you bring 8 bundles of cotton to the weigh station, you get paid for 8. It's fixed.
All right.
If you bring 7, you don't get paid. So it's a fixed number of doing things you get paid, or you get reinforcers, or you get a reward.
All right. What about variable interval?
Well, that's most of our behavior.
Okay.
Because time is so hard to measure and to equate because it doesn't have fence posts like other things do. Did you say variable or fixed?
Variable interval.
Variable interval means that sometimes you'll get a reinforcer every 20 minutes and sometimes it'll be every 10 minutes.
Okay.
But over the length of time, it'll average out to 7.356.
Interesting.
So it's variable.
And what about variable? That was variable interval. What about variable ratio?
Same thing. Sometimes you get paid for 12 bags. Sometimes you get paid for 8. But the point is, you and I are paid not per genius, but for number of hours we're in front of students. Not for the pre-work, not for the thousands of nights we stayed up trying to solve a problem. We're paid for the hours in front of a student.
Yeah.
That's it. So we're not paid for a lot of those hours in a regular way. And so they become part of a cluster that says, I have to spend, 42 days in front of a student to fill out a semester or something like that. And that comes out to how many hours, and that comes out to all the other things that we do. But we're only paid by the hour, in a sense, at least as adjuncts. So if I have 4 classes and it's 4 times 40 hours of teaching, that's what I get paid.
Yeah.
So that's all the calculations. Okay. So those are the basic things. When you understand that everything is spatial and temporal, there's nothing else. Even on the quantum level, there's probably that. Quantum being so low, so small, you probably won't ever grasp it. But even on the quantum level, there's just time and space. So spatial things are that, timing of numbers and things like that. And temporal is the time spent between the events. So you've got the fence posts, which is the spatial issue, and you've got the space in between the fence posts, which is the temporal issue. You don't have markers for it, so it's a little bit more difficult.
So let's say I want to get somebody to do something.
Yeah, your dog. Who's your dog?
I'm going to actually use our listeners, right? So
okay,
we can release episodes of this. We can have great guests. We can have John Bryant on the show. What's the best way to get people to come back? Like, should I throw a show up every once in a while? Should there be, constant...
in the beginning of any conditioning, just anybody, students, parents, because you're conditioning your parents all the time too. You've got to feed them stuff frequently with less Herculean things to do, less abstractions, less, if you eat the peas on your plate, then you can play video games. Real simple.
Yeah.
And you only give them 5 peas.
Okay.
But after a couple months, they've got to eat a portion of 180 peas or whatever it is, or the food on their plate or whatever. And then you slowly feed them more, because if you use rewards and it's too rich, the person gets a Dove chocolate for almost anything they do. It stops being reinforcing and starts to be mildly irritating to the user. And it's very difficult to maintain. So in order to facilitate that, you have to shape them into having a leaner and leaner and leaner set of rewards. So at some point, when you get a person climbing and their ability to repel is not careless and it's not overcautious, you can say, I think you need to go on the 300-meter side of this hill and start playing with those things, just like you do in the gym.
Yeah, that's great.
You got to try this now, because those, you actually are reinforced by making improvements in acquiring a higher space each time you do that. And if you just have, if you just have 6 feet, there's no reinforcer there.
Yeah. So starting off on some kind of fixed system and moving towards something more variable sounds like it's the way to go.
It does, but here's the stuff that's the reality. I don't have that piece of iron here anymore. You know that this glass works as a magnifying glass, and you don't know why it amplifies like it does. In the case of understanding behavior, you can understand these scheduled, but you can't see them very clearly in the real world.
Yeah.
You can empirically demonstrate they're there. You pay attention to your gas tank. When it's down, you say, time to get gas. So you can, and that's called avoidance. And it's another term. But the point is that in the free world, in our conversation, I'm reinforced by your questions. Hopefully you're reinforced by my answers. And if you're reinforced by my answers, I'm reinforced by your being reinforced.
Yeah.
So you get this very complicated, which is why it's not popular. It's not stupid, like many of the explanations for behavior are. It's complicated. And for you to want to know about that is great, but it is not going to be simple.
Yeah.
And it's not simple. So we don't know why people kill each other. And people that say, well, he's Hispanic, or he's Jewish, or he's this, or he's that, or that's all poppycock.
Yeah.
It's just ridiculous. And it fits the narrative that you were taught in the church, in the synagogue, and the mosque, and in temple, that men are certain ways, and women are certain ways, and children are certain ways. And none of that's true.
Yeah.
It's complicated.
It's complicated.
So I can tell when someone's being reinforced in my class because of the way they act. Afterwards, they ask a question. Are you shitting me? This is really true. And I go, yeah. So the point is that it's just this constant reciprocity, and that's the exact word, for they affect me, I affect them, and their effect is affecting me again. So that's community.
Reciprocity, yeah.
Yeah, that's community too. And the people that don't contribute to that in the community are outliers usually of some sort.
So I think I can predict what you might say about this, but I'd like to hear it from you. What would you say to the idea that some people are born to be climbers?
It's so romantic. It's so cute. It's something your mother would say, and you don't listen to her half the time anyhow. So why would you listen to the things that are goosey? I mean, it's a romantic thought. But no one's born to be anything. No one's born to be anything. When you're born, you're not even half wired yet.
So you would disagree that people are born to be climbers?
They're not born to be anything, right?
Yeah.
Including climbers. Maybe particularly climbers, because it's pretty much a dangerous environment.
Yeah, and I think there's a lot of examples I think we could come up with. Yes. If Michael Phelps was raised in a place where there was no access to water, he wouldn't be the greatest swimmer.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. If he was in South Africa or in Middle Africa, he would be in deep doo-doo because there's no water.
Yeah. All right. I'm sorry. Go ahead, John.
No, if you're not around mountains, if you live in Arizona, Arizona is a bad example. If you live in Kansas, you might not be a climber.
That's a great example.
In fact, I was gonna drop this off to you, but I've got this thing here. You may be a climber if, and it's really cute. I don't have it at my fingertips, but it's a set of things. You may be a climber if.
I'll grab it from you next time. I'll make sure to
The
promote it.
first one is you may be a climber if you have more pictures of you summiting than you have of your wedding pictures.
You might be a climber if that's the case.
You might be a climber.
There's a chance that you're a climber.
You might be a climber if you own a $350 suit, but prefer a $1,000 Gore-Tex jacket.
In that case, there's a chance.
Maybe a climber.
So
yes.
Hopefully you can talk about this for a couple minutes at least. And you can correct me on the language, but it seems like a strong reinforcer in climbing and probably in racquetball and I don't know, a lot of other things is this idea of flow. Can you, is it even possible to explain flow?
Yeah, it is. It is. And different disciplines touch it at different places, and then they call it something stupid. But flow, because you can't dissect the reinforcers real time. You don't know why someone is doing what they're doing. They're working on their car for 3 hours straight to get something fixed. And you go, there are mechanics out of work. Why don't you just take it to them and they'll have the parts and tools and knowledge done to you. And right when you say it, everybody's coming up that hears this says, because it's fun to work on cars.
Yeah.
Just like it's fun to climb a wall. It's a puzzle that you are trying to piece together. And that's the joy.
Yeah.
And the little joys that go is that when you get a handhold where you forgot there was one, or you have one that's adequate to where your state is and your physical ability is, and your confidence is, and you make that grasp and you move your body in a way that's illegal in several countries, and you get where you're going.
Yeah.
It's so flow is the things that work together. When you walk into dinner, you see food on the table, and maybe not napkins, and blah, 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 blah. You see all the things that are reinforcing there, the things that are missing there. You smell things that you like smelling, you've been reinforced for the last time. You see that the tea is hot. You see that this is going. You see there's a nice combination of food in front of you for carbohydrates, proteins, and other nutrients. And you go, man, this is great.
Yeah.
That's flow.
It's a great feeling.
When you don't try and slice and dice. If you get in the slice and dice mode, you will be disappointed soon.
Yeah.
Because you can't keep it up. When you're climbing, you can't keep it up.
Right.
Because it's dependent upon your antecedents that you had, and if you haven't trained, you won't even recognize a good, what is it in climbing? A good move.
A good move, yeah.
You won't recognize a good move because you haven't climbed enough to recognize that pattern. And so these patterns make up the flow. When you're lecturing, you're in the flow.
Yeah.
When someone asks you what your during the lecture, what are your ethno-political preferences, you come out of the flow because it's inappropriate behavior.
Yeah. It's like, don't you understand? I was in the flow. Like, what are you asking me that?
No, they don't. No, they don't.
It really feels great. I mean, there's days when you're in front of the class and you're up there for an hour and a half, and it feels like a minute. Exactly.
Yeah, you're in the flow.
People are closing their books. You're like, what are you doing? And then on the
Yeah.
road too, you work a route so hard sometimes, and then that one time you get on it, everything connects. You
It's
don't
like,
even realize you're at the top, but you're there.
Yeah.
It's great. So
why didn't you tell me?
Yeah, exactly.
This path was here.
Should be longer.
Hasn't changed. Yeah, so that's the flow. The flow is all these things come together, and you have some awareness that there are reinforcers or rewards in the world, and there are punitive things in the world, and you don't want to stick your hand in a garbage disposal and turn it on. See, you know that. You read books, so you don't have to get your information firsthand. You don't have to fall to learn.
Yeah.
You can watch someone miscalculate their strengths and say, that's a problem. The person's not strong enough, they're not agile enough, they're not focused enough, and they fell. And in doing that, that's probably how we learn 90% of the things in life, whether it's how to treat people of the opposite sex or people with non-binary status or people that are homeless and things. We learned to treat them the way we treat them from watching other people and getting essentially rewarded for following that if it's good and avoiding that if it's bad. That's both kinds of learning.